Auckland's post-war growth was shaped by the car. From the 1950s onward, urban development followed motorway investment outward from the isthmus, producing a dispersed low-density city where most trips are too long for walking, too dispersed for efficient buses, and where 4 decades of habit and infrastructure have locked private vehicle use into the default behaviour of most households. Approximately 80% of Auckland person trips are made by private vehicle, a proportion that has barely moved in a decade despite significant public transport investment. The mode share is not primarily a function of service quality, it is a function of land use. The economic cost of Auckland's car dependency is not abstract. NZIA estimated the cost of weekday congestion at roughly $0.913 billion a year, about 1.4% of Auckland's GDP, with some later estimates higher. Peak hour travel times on key corridors run well above free-flow speeds, a severity unusual for a city of Auckland's size. Every lane added to a motorway generates new demand, the fundamental law of road congestion, returning the network to capacity within a political cycle. The physical expansion of the roading network cannot solve the congestion problem. It is a supply response to demand that grows to fill any new capacity. Transport accessibility is not uniformly distributed across Auckland. Households without a car, disproportionately lower income, elderly and disabled, face severe restrictions on employment and service access in a city designed around vehicle ownership. The rapid transit network serves the CBD, the Southern and Eastern Rail lines, and the Northern Busway, but leaves the Northwest, much of the North Shore, and the outer South without fast, frequent connections. Where PT is slow and infrequent, car ownership is not a choice but a structural requirement for participation in the labour market. A cycling network where most routes are excellent, but a minority of links require riding in 50 km/h traffic, is functionally unusable for most potential cyclists. Network connectivity is a multiplicative property. Each gap degrades the utility of every connected segment by making it impossible to complete a trip without an on-road section. Auckland's cycling infrastructure, the Northwestern Cycleway, the Light Path Beach Road, the Waitemata Harbour Shared Path, is high quality within each segment but not connected into a system. The result is infrastructure used by confident cyclists who would cycle anyway, not by the interested but concerned majority who would cycle if they felt safe. Auckland's own evidence refutes the claim that the city is too hilly, too spread out, or too car-oriented to support cycling. Protected cycleways built in Auckland have grown usage faster than it projected. The Light Path, the Northwestern Cycleway extensions, and Beach Road all attracted more cyclists than modelled. The latent demand exists. The constraint is safety perception, not desire, and safety perception is determined by physical infrastructure design, specifically whether a cyclist is physically separated from motor traffic or merely painted lane adjacent to it. A far higher share of Auckland children walked or cycled to school a generation ago than does today. The school trip is both a major source of peak hour congestion and the entry point for lifelong active travel habit. School streets programs, closing streets immediately outside schools to private vehicles during drop-off and pick-up, have demonstrated dramatic increases in walking and cycling rates in cities from London to Melbourne. They are also among the cheapest and fastest deployable interventions available, requiring temporary signs rather than capital construction. Every motorway expansion in Auckland's history has been followed by return to congestion within a decade. The mechanism is well established in transport economics. Adding road capacity reduces travel times temporarily, which induces additional trips from travellers who previously avoided peak times, used PT, or relocated closer to work. The induced demand restores the network to a congested equilibrium at a higher absolute volume. This is not a planning failure, it is the predictable response of a road network where use is unpriced. Managing congestion through capacity alone is a treadmill. The city must keep building to stay in place. Auckland road users pay fuel excise and registration charges, but face no charge for the congestion externality they impose at peak times. This means peak demand is managed by queuing. Drivers sit in traffic as the implicit price of using the road. The roughly $0.913 billion annual cost of weekday congestion estimated by NZIA is the aggregate cost of that queuing. Road pricing replaces the time cost with a money cost, which can be calibrated to manage demand efficiently and recycled into PT or active mode investment. It is the only tool that both manages demand and generates revenue to fund alternatives. The ports of Auckland sit on CBD-adjacent waterfront, routing significant volumes of container trucks through inner-city streets to reach the southern motorway corridor. There is no dedicated freight rail connection from the port to the inland distribution network at Wiri, meaning freight and commuter traffic compete for the same lanes on the same corridors during the same peak hours. The economic case for port relocation is well established, but the implementation timeline spans decades. Auckland's rapid transit spine, the rail lines Northern Busway and Eastern Busway, serves major corridors well but leaves the northwest, most of the North Shore, and the outer south without fast, frequent connections. More than half of Auckland's residential land area lies beyond 800 m of any rapid transit stop. These residents face bus services too slow and infrequent to attract discretionary car trips. The City Rail link, delayed past its original target and not yet open, will transform rail capacity when complete, designed to carry approximately 54,000 passengers per peak hour at full build-out. But it does not extend the geographic reach of the network. It makes the existing spine faster and more reliable. Bus service frequency, how long passengers must wait if they miss a bus, is the single strongest predictor of PT mode share for discretionary trips. Frequent services are usable without consulting a timetable. Infrequent ones require planning and penalise any uncertainty in departure. Most Auckland bus services outside the rapid transit spine run at frequencies low enough to require that planning even at peak, with much longer waits off-peak and on weekends, combined with shared running in congested traffic, which makes journey times slow and unpredictable. This produces a service that is a last resort rather than a genuine alternative for households with a working car. At operating budget faces a structural gap between what the fare box and local rates can fund and what frequent, reliable services across the network cost. Farebox recovery covers only a minority of operating costs. The majority of PT is already subsidised, but the subsidy level is insufficient to fund the frequency improvements that would generate the patronage growth to close the gap. The funding architecture, split between Auckland Council and central government's National Land Transport Fund, creates accountability diffusion that has historically prevented the sustained investment required to break the low-frequency/low-patronage equilibrium.